From the inky blackness of the galactic void emerged the Glarbian Armada, a formidable sight to behold. Their ships, sleek and bioluminescent, pulsed with an eerie blue light, reflecting the aquatic nature of their creators. The Glarbians were an empire built on honor, procedure, and an unwavering devotion to the art of war. Born in the crushing depths of a high-gravity water world, the Glarbians had evolved into a species perfectly adapted for combat. Their bodies, streamlined and muscular, were covered in armored scales that shimmered with an iridescent sheen. Their large, multifaceted eyes granted them exceptional vision in the murky depths of their home oceans, and their gills allowed them to breathe both water and a specially synthesized oxygen mixture necessary for space travel. Glarbian society was rigidly structured, a hierarchy based on military rank and adherence to ancient traditions. Every aspect of their lives, from courtship rituals to combat strategies, was governed by a complex set of rules and protocols. Disobedience was met with swift and merciless punishment, while adherence to the code was rewarded with prestige and power. The Glarbians' advanced technology was a testament to their disciplined minds and unwavering focus. Their ships were equipped with powerful energy weapons, capable of vaporizing asteroids and disabling enemy vessels with equal ease. Their armor, crafted from a rare, self-repairing alloy, could withstand even the most devastating attacks, and their communication systems, based on a complex network of sonic pulses, allowed them to coordinate their forces with pinpoint accuracy. At the heart of the Armada was the flagship, the Tidebringer, a colossal vessel bristling with weaponry and carrying the weight of Glarbian ambition. Its mission was of utmost importance: to secure a vital strategic resource, a nebula rich in the rare element known as aqualux. This element was crucial for powering their advanced technology, and its acquisition would ensure the Glarbian Empire's continued dominance over the galaxy. The Glarbians perceived any threat to that dominance as an existential threat to the core of their culture and civilization. The boarding ramp hissed open, and stepping onto the highly polished deck of the Tidebringer was, well, a human. A rather unimpressive one at that. This was Agent Davies, Earth representative, assigned, as the humans put it, for diplomatic liaison purposes. The Glarbians weren't entirely sure what that meant, but they had orders to tolerate the fleshy biped. Davies, dressed in what the Glarbians understood was a casual outfit, a slightly rumpled jumpsuit and sneakers, strolled onto the bridge with a duffel bag slung over their shoulder. "Morning, folks," Davies drawled, offering a small wave to the assembled Glarbian officers. "Hope I didn't miss breakfast or, whatever you guys eat." The Glarbian captain, a formidable warrior named Krill Commander Ganache, turned his gaze upon the human. His multifaceted eyes narrowed slightly. "Greetings, Agent Davies," he boomed, his voice a deep, resonant rumble. "I am Krill Commander Ganache, captain of the Tidebringer. Welcome. Aboard." The last word was delivered with a palpable sense of reservation. "Pleasure's all mine, Krill Commander," Davies replied, dropping the duffel bag with a soft thud. "Though, if you don't mind me saying, this place could use a little sprucing up. Bit drab, innit?" Nash's armored scales rippled slightly. "Drab? This vessel is a testament to Glarbian efficiency and martial prowess. It is not designed for frivolous aesthetics." Right, efficiency," Davies said with a dismissive wave. "So, tour? Where do I dump my stuff? And more importantly, where's the loo? Space travel does a number on a guy." Nash, visibly struggling to maintain his composure, gestured to a subordinate. "Lieutenant F. will show you to your quarters and provide you with a comprehensive orientation." Lieutenant F., a younger Glarbian officer with an almost painfully rigid posture, approached Davies. "Agent Davies, if you would follow me, please try to keep up." Davies grinned. "Lead the way, Fshar. Just try not to bore me to death with too much technical jargon, yeah?" As Fshar led Davies away, Nash watched them go, a sense of foreboding washing over him. This human, he suspected, was going to be trouble. Fshar led Davies through the gleaming corridors of the Tidebringer, rattling off facts and figures about the ship's systems. Davies, for the most part, seemed utterly uninterested, occasionally interjecting with irrelevant questions. "So, this hallway," Davies interrupted, "is it, like, pressure-washed every day? 'Cause it's kinda sparkly." Shar paused, his gills fluttering in irritation. "This corridor is maintained to optimal sanitary standards, as is the entire vessel. Now, if you would direct your attention to the environmental control systems." He gestured towards a series of large, cylindrical tanks filled with a shimmering, turquoise liquid. Bubbles gently rose from the bottom. "These are the sacred bubbles. They are essential for atmospheric regulation and spiritual well-being of the crew." Davies peered into one of the tanks, tapping the glass. "Huh, big fish tanks. You guys keep, like, space koi in there or something?" Shar recoiled, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Space koi? These are not mere fish tanks, Agent Davies. They are vital life support systems. The sacred bubbles contain a carefully cultivated ecosystem of microorganisms that generate breathable atmosphere and emit calming pheromones." Davies shrugged. "Calming pheromones, eh? Explains why everyone looks so uptight. Maybe you need more pheromones? Or, I don't know, some mood lighting?" He chuckled, earning a bewildered stare from Fishar. "Just a thought. So, can I, like, stick my hand in there? See if I can feel the spiritual well-being?" "Absolutely not," Fshar exclaimed, grabbing Davies's arm. "These bubbles are revered. Contact with foreign substances is strictly prohibited. You could contaminate the entire ecosystem." He paused, regaining his composure. "Now, if you please. Agent Davies, let's move on to the weaponry bay." Later that day, during a mandatory ship-wide inspection, Krill Commander Nash noticed something peculiar. He was inspecting the sacred bubbles when he saw it. A small rubber duck floating serenely amidst the shimmering turquoise liquid. Nash stopped dead in his tracks. He summoned Fshar immediately. "Lieutenant, explain this thing." He pointed, a claw towards the rubber duck, his voice laced with barely suppressed fury. Fshar stammered, his gills twitching erratically. I have no idea, Krill Commander. I assure you I have not seen this avian object before." Nash glared at the duck, then back at Fishar. "This is a clear violation of protocol, a desecration of the sacred bubbles. Find out who is responsible, Lieutenant, and make sure they understand the gravity of their actions." He turned and stormed off, leaving Fshar to stare at the offending rubber duck with a growing sense of dread. This human, he thought, was turning out to be even more trouble than he had anticipated. The rubber duck incident was, as the Glarbians like to say, merely the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few cycles, more alterations began to appear around the sacred bubbles. Small, almost imperceptible at first, but undeniable nonetheless. Nash, now practically frothing at the gills, made daily rounds to inspect the bubbles. What he found defied all logic and violated every tenet of Glarbian honor. Someone, and it didn't take a bioluminescent genius to guess who, had been tampering with the life support systems. First, there were the bubbles themselves. Normally, the sacred bubbles produced a steady stream of small, uniform bubbles. Now, however, some of the bubbles were different, larger, oddly shaped, some even forming crude, almost recognizable shapes. Krill Commander Nash swore he saw one that resembled a Glarbian battlecruiser, though he dismissed it as a hallucination, brought on by stress. Then there were the additions. Tiny, colorful objects, seemingly made of some kind of pliable material, adorned the inside of the tanks. One bubble now contained a miniature replica of a human dwelling, complete with tiny, improbable furniture. Another featured what appeared to be a scaled-down version of a human conveyance device, what Davies had called a sports car. The most baffling of all, however, was the artwork. Using some unknown implement, Davies had begun to etch designs into the algae that grew on the inside of the tanks. Crude drawings, almost childlike in their simplicity, depicted scenes of, well, Nash wasn't entirely sure what they depicted. One seemed to show a Glarbian warrior riding a giant rubber duck. Fshar, meanwhile, was a nervous wreck. He followed Nash on his inspections, offering increasingly desperate explanations. Perhaps the microorganisms are mutating, Krill Commander, adapting to the environment. It's a sign of the bubble's vitality. Nash merely glared at him, his eyes narrowed. Vitality? Lieutenant, these bubbles look like a child's playpen. Agent Davies is clearly up to something sinister. He paused, stroking his chin, with a claw. But what could it be? What possible purpose could be served by these frivolous additions? The Glarbian High Command was equally perplexed. Reports of the sacred bubble anomaly reached the highest levels of the Empire. Theories abounded. Was Davies attempting to poison the crew with subliminal messages hidden in the bubble art? Was he trying to sabotage the life support systems, or was he simply insane? The evidence was mounting. Davies had been observed near the bubbles on multiple occasions, carrying strange containers and humming off-key human melodies. He had even asked a junior technician for a really big straw and something that fizzes. The Glarbian officers huddled in the war room, their bioluminescent skin flashing with anxiety. "This cannot be tolerated," declared Admiral Krill, the highest-ranking officer on board. "Agent Davies must be apprehended and interrogated. We must discover the true nature of his modifications before it's too late. The fate of the Tidebringer and perhaps the entire Glarbian Empire may hang in the balance." The interrogation room was naturally a marvel of Glarbian efficiency. Constructed of polished obsidian and bathed in the eerie glow of bioluminescent algae, it was designed to intimidate even the most hardened criminal, which Agent Davies most certainly was not. Davies sat in the center of the room, seemingly unfazed by the array of sensors and interrogation devices pointed at him. He was offered a hydration bladder filled with lukewarm brine, which he politely declined. "Thanks, but I'm good," he said with a shrug. "Hydrated, that is, though a gin and tonic would really hit the spot right now." Admiral Krill, observing from behind a reinforced glass partition, exchanged a worried glance with Commander Nash. "His lack of fear is disturbing," Krill hissed. "He exhibits none of the expected signs of guilt or apprehension." The interrogation began. Fashar, sweating profusely, read from a pre-approved list of questions. "Agent Davies, you are accused of unauthorized modifications to sacred bubbles, life support systems vital to the health and well-being of the crew. How do you plead?" Davies yawned. "Look, can we skip the formalities? I plead bored, extremely bored, and a little thirsty if that gin and tonic offer is still on the table." Fashar sputtered, completely thrown off by Davies's casual response. But the charges, the gravity of the situation." "Gravity? On a spaceship? That's what the artificial gravity generators are for, buddy." Davies grinned, oblivious to the rising tension in the room. "Seriously, though, what's the big deal? It's just a few decorations." Nash, unable to contain himself any longer, took over the questioning. "Decorations? You call those monstrosities decorations? You have desecrated the sacred bubbles with your frivolous additions." He gestured to a holographic projection of one of the modified bubbles, complete with rubber duck and miniature sports car. "Explain yourself, human. What is the purpose of these objects?" Davies considered the question for a moment, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "Well, the duck's for company. Makes the bubbles feel less lonely, you know. And the car, that's just for a little zoom action. Gives the microorganism something to aspire to." The Glarbian officers exchanged bewildered glances. Zoom action? Aspire to? Krill muttered under his breath. His explanations are nonsensical. He's clearly trying to mislead us. Nash pressed on, his voice rising in anger. "We have evidence that you requested a really big straw and something that fizzes. What were you planning to do with those items, human?" Davies chuckled. "Okay, you got me. I was going to make a giant bubble bath. For the microorganisms. Thought they might enjoy it." He paused, then added with a wink, "Maybe even throw in a little bath bomb." The Glarbians were now convinced that Davies was either insane or a master manipulator. Either way, he was proving to be a formidable adversary. Krill signaled to a technician, who activated a device that emitted a high-pitched sonic frequency. "This device will induce compliance," Krill explained, his voice cold and menacing. "Tell us the truth, human. What is your true purpose on this ship? What are you planning to do with the sacred bubbles?" Davies winced at the sound, but otherwise remained unfazed. All right, geez, sensitive ears. Look, the truth is, I just wanted to make the place a little more homey." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This ship is kind of depressing, you know? All gray and metallic. I just wanted to add a little life." His words hung in the air, met with stony silence. The Glarbians were unmoved. They were prepared for sabotage, for espionage, for intergalactic war, but they were not prepared for interior decorating. "He's stalling," Nash growled. "He's waiting for his accomplices to make their move. Prepare for the worst, Admiral. I believe he's about to unleash whatever chaos he has planned." The tension in the room reached its breaking point. The Glarbians braced themselves for the inevitable: sabotage, destruction, the end of the Tidebringer. The truth, as it turned out, was far less dramatic. Much less. Davies hadn't been plotting sabotage. He wasn't a spy, nor an advance scout for some invading force. He was just homesick, desperately, profoundly homesick, and apparently unable to process alien technology as anything other than incredibly depressing household appliances, those unauthorized modifications. They were a clumsy, almost pathetic attempt to recreate a semblance of earthly comfort within the cold, sterile environment of the Glarbian flagship. The sacred bubbles, far from being objects of deep religious significance or vital life support systems, were, in Davies's mind, nothing more than oversized, awkwardly shaped fish tanks just begging for a makeover. The rubber duck, a bathtub toy. The miniature sports car, a whimsical addition to the underwater landscape. The really big straw, and something that fizzes, an abandoned attempt at creating a DIY jacuzzi for the microbial life, which he'd ultimately decided was a bit too ambitious. In reality, the modifications were a rudimentary, almost childlike attempt to transform the Glarbian life support system into a human-friendly aquarium. A bizarre, colorful, and utterly baffling testament to one man's longing for a familiar world. The Glarbian High Command stared into the modified sacred bubbles, their multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. Admiral Gorlak, a veteran of countless interstellar skirmishes, felt something akin to confusion. Not the tactical confusion of battle, but something far more unsettling. The rubber ducks bobbed gently, their cheerful yellow clashing violently with the battleship's austere metallic interior. Tiny streams of bubbles rose from the seabed, illuminated by the soft, pulsating glow of the modified lighting system. It was garish. One of the younger officers, barely out of his larval stage, tentatively reached a clawed hand toward a floating plastic starfish. He recoiled as if burned, then glanced nervously at Admiral Gorlak. "Is this psychological warfare?" he croaked, his voice modulator trembling. Admiral Gorlak, his mandibles clicking in agitation, could only shake his head. I do not know," he confessed, a rare admission of ignorance. The air, usually thick with the tension of impending battle, was now filled with an unsettling tranquility. Without conscious thought, Gorlak found himself drawn closer to the bubble. He gazed at the gently swaying plastic kelp, the miniature pirate ship, the utterly pointless but strangely compelling arrangement of colorful pebbles on the bottom. A strange sensation began to creep over him, starting in his gills and spreading through his carapace. It was calming. A profound sense of relaxation he had never experienced in his long and distinguished military career. Another officer, drawn in by the Admiral's stillness, cautiously approached the bubble. He too stared, transfixed at the underwater tableau. A moment later, his battle-hardened face softened. His grip on his plasma rifle loosened. The tension seemed to drain from his body, replaced by something akin to contentment. Soon, the entire bridge crew was gathered around the modified sacred bubbles, their usual postures of rigid attention replaced with a slack-jawed stupor. The war room hummed with the soft gurgle of bubbles and the gentle chirping of the modified filtration system. The mission to conquer Sector Gamma, utterly forgotten. Even the ever-vigilant security drones seemed to slow their patrols, their optical sensors softening as they passed the bubbles. Inside, the rubber ducks continued their silent, unwavering vigil, emissaries of a world utterly alien, yet somehow soothing. The fate of the Glarbian Empire, it seemed, now rested on the peculiar appeal of a plastic bath toy. The effect was undeniable. The Glarbian worldview, so meticulously constructed on pillars of honor and conquest, began to fracture like sea ice under a warming sun. The sight of their fiercest warriors, mesmerized by rubber ducks, was a turning point. Perhaps, just perhaps, not every alien culture represented a threat to their dominance. Agent Davies's bizarre obsession hadn't been sabotage or a prelude to invasion, but an offering. An olive branch, extended in the form of a plastic waterfowl. Hesitantly, the Glarbians began to explore this strange new concept of relaxation. Initially, it was met with suspicion and ingrained resistance. Meditative practices felt unproductive, leisure activities seemed frivolous, and unscheduled downtime was practically heretical. But the allure of the bubbles, with their calming ambiance and utter lack of strategic value, proved too strong to resist. Slowly, tentatively, the Glarbians started incorporating elements of human relaxation into their routines. Short, mandatory, bubble breaks were implemented, followed by slightly longer periods of contemplative observation. The mission to Sector Gamma was eventually completed, though with a noticeable lack of enthusiasm. The Glarbian soldiers, still efficient, were, somehow, mellow. They negotiated trade agreements instead of demanding tribute and offered surprisingly generous terms. The universe was not conquered, but diplomatically acquired, and all thanks to the unexpected value of a simple rubber duck. Years later, the Glarbian Armada presented a very different sight. Gone were the days of purely utilitarian warships, bristling with weaponry and echoing with the harsh commands of drill sergeants. Now each flagship boasted a dedicated human relaxation chamber. These chambers, initially crude imitations of Davies's original modifications, had evolved into elaborate aquatic environments. Glarbian engineers, with their obsessive attention to detail, had perfected the art of bubble generation. Kelp forests swayed gently in the simulated currents, lit by soothing bioluminescent algae. And of course, no chamber was complete without a meticulously curated collection of human bath toys. Rubber ducks remained a staple, but now they were joined by miniature submarines, plastic sailboats, and even the occasional action figure, all floating serenely amidst the bubbles. The effect on the Glarbian military was remarkable. The edge hadn't been completely dulled, but the constant tension that had defined their culture had lessened considerably. Strategic planning sessions were punctuated by brief moments of meditative bubble gazing. Interspecies negotiations were conducted with a newfound patience and understanding. Even the supreme commanders were rumored to sneak away for a quiet moment with their favorite rubber ducky before delivering galaxy-altering decrees. The galaxy, as a whole, became a slightly more peaceful place. Conflicts were resolved through carefully worded agreements rather than outright conquest. Trade flourished, and the Glarbian Empire, once feared for its relentless expansion, became known for its surprisingly Zen-like approach to galactic politics. Somewhere, on a small, unremarkable planet called Earth, Agent Davies chuckled watching a news report about the latest Glarbian peace treaty. Knew they'd come around, Davies muttered, reaching for another bag of cheese puffs. Just needed a little relaxation. The universe, it seemed, had been saved not by a hero, but by a well-intentioned goofball with a penchant for turning alien technology into oversized fish tanks.